Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Ann Ziola, and I'm the Executive Director of Alumni Engagement at Doane University. And our goals in the Doane Alumni Office are always to educate, engage, and empower alumni and friends. And we are so excited that you have decided to join us for this webinar in our brand new professional and personal development program called Lifelong Tigers. This webinar will be recorded and shared on our webpage, and we are also live today on Facebook. So hello to everybody that's joining us via social media. Today, the Doane Alumni Association is hosting a program called From Colleague to Leader, Becoming a New Manager, and that's presented by Doane alumni Peggy Sandel-Bertrand. So just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you are joining us through Zoom and you have any issues with connectivity, problems hearing, be sure and leave a message in our chat box, and that's located at the bottom of your screen on the Zoom toolbar. And our Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement, Mike Stellick, will be there to help you with those items. You can also chat with each other in the chat box about your own experiences on today's topic, and we'll be sure to throw a few questions out there too. But if you have any questions for Peggy during the presentation, please be sure and type them into the question and answer box that's also located in the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. And we'll have time throughout the presentation at the end to answer those questions. And we'll try to get to as many as we can. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Peggy Sandel-Bertrand. Peggy graduated from Doane in 1996, and she has worked in the employment industry for over 20 years. First as an employment consultant, teaching groups how to interview and employment skills, then as a program manager and staffing professional. And currently, she is the Chief Operations Officer for a national staffing company called Advanced Services, Inc. Peggy gets to work with great professionals in the company's offices as well as clients from all over the country, and she is dedicated to providing her clients with unparalleled customer service and the most qualified employees in the market. So Peggy, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, sounds great. So, can see my screen okay? I'm sort of centered in the Zoom. Zoom's a little bit different, so we'll go through it. I am thrilled to be here today talking to you about going from a colleague to a leader and becoming a new manager. As Ann mentioned, we'll have times for questions at the end. I have a little interactive chat we'll do kind of early on. Doane really got me started on my path to leadership and management, so I want to talk about that first. While applying for Doane admissions and scholarships, I had the chance to really look at my early experience as a leader in high school and at work. While at Doane, I had the opportunity to not only receive a top-notch education and the opportunity for leadership classes, but to have tremendous experiences in leadership roles in the activities and groups that I was part of. I knew the minute I stepped foot onto that campus that that's where I was going to go. I had a great 4 years. I met my husband there, and now our oldest son is a Doane Tiger. So I am really pleased to be part of the Lifelong Tigers program today. I've had opportunities to manage my former manager, to go from colleague to manager, repair broken teams, create company initiatives, lead in times of prosper and crisis, and to develop new teams. We have a lot to talk about today, so let's get started. Again, colleague to leader and becoming a new manager. I'd like to start with our learning objectives for today. Objective 1, what changes are needed for new managers? 2, how to let go of old responsibilities and change certain relationships. How to lead and manage through adversity. Best practices for continued success, and more. I add that because leading and managing is ever changing. Leaders are constantly evolving and growing, and so our objectives for today must also leave room for a bit of evolution. If I could have everyone bring up their chat icon and give me a thumbs up on the chat feature if you have been a manager for 1 minute to 1 year. Okay. Same signal, thumbs up if you've been a manager for 1 or more years. Okay. We'll give it a couple more minutes here, or a couple more seconds, I should say. Okay, and now give me the same acknowledgement, thumbs up, if you're not currently a manager, but that's a goal of yours. I see some names I recognize on the chat. Okay, great. The reason I ask that is because what we are going to talk about today applies whether you've been a manager for a minute, for a lot of years, or you just simply want to grow and develop your skills as you work towards management. As with most things, paths to management are not always the same. Your path may be straight and clear, or it may be a bit more twisty and turny. Mine was a lot more like number 2, and we'll get to that in a minute. There's no secret to being a great manager or a dynamic leader. It is a series of behaviors and actions done again and again and changed for certain situations and certain groups of people. It's just behaviors repeated again and again. Let's talk a little bit about leadership and management. Leadership is mission-driven. Management is more task-driven. It is said that leaders coach and managers direct. These are some words often associated with leading: influencing, inspiring, people-focused, proactive, set direction, raise expectations, transparency, and ownership. And these are words often tied, or behaviors often tied with managing. Policies and procedures, managing work, reactive, giving directions, results-oriented, listening, and sharing information. So if we look at the 2 lists, there's some pretty similar words on there, maybe just phrased slightly different, but the concepts are the same. I have found that when I'm at my best, when I combine the 2, I look for that in groups that I work with and myself as a manager. Things like accomplishing my goals, being a visionary, motivating others, mobilizing people and resources, developing others, achieving results, and displaying integrity. So again, given the situation, you may slide to one side or the other. A lot of what we're talking about today is based on my own personal experience, books I've read. There are hundreds and hundreds of resources out there. You can look on the internet, seminars and classes. And so this is a compilation of that. I received some wise advice a long time ago that when you hear something that you like, you should adapt it. You should adapt it, excuse me, to your situation versus adopt it. So take what we talk about today and apply it and tweak it to your own situation. So unfortunately, it is all too easy for managers to develop bad habits. Let's do a poll, again, via the chat. What do you think the top skills that managers are lacking? Anything you've got, what you think is lacking is what I want to hear. Okay, I'm seeing some good words up there. We'll give it just one more second, make sure nobody else has anything they want to share. Okay. That's awesome. Great compliment, Anne. Okay. According to the 2019 Predictive Index, these were the top 5 skills that managers were lacking. Team building, providing feedback, time management, delegation, and communication. Now, I think it's important to note with this diagram too, that 20% of the pie is made up of other. And so that could be who knows what included in there. So there's a lot of areas for managers to have pitfalls. And every great leader and manager stumbles from time to time. Maybe you don't inspire that you want to on an issue. Perhaps you procrastinate. You fall short of your deadlines. It happens. It's valuable to look at data like this to know what employees are saying that's important to them, so that as you prepare to be a manager or you make that transition to management, you can always strive to try and hit that mark. So here's the great thing about preparing to be a manager or a leader. You can do it at any time, even before you have the official title. So I mentioned earlier that my path to management was a bit windy. It began quite simply because an organization I was working for at the time, I was not selected as a manager. I'd interviewed for it, I'd applied, and I wasn't picked. Now, y'all saw my graduation year, so you know that the internet wasn't probably quite as prevalent as it is today. So I went home and grabbed the one ads from the newspaper and sat on my couch eating ice cream and crying my eyes out because I was not selected. And my mentor to this day said, you have 2 choices. You can sit on your couch in your jammy pants and you can cry, or you can do something about it. So I decided that day I was going to do something about it. I was going to outlast that person, and I was going to improve my skills and develop myself so that I would be ready when another opportunity came. You never know which way your path will go. And the first step to making that transition to management is to prepare. So I've got some things that really helped me prepare. And whether you have been in management for a long time or you're new to it, these are skills that we can always brush up on. Know your strengths and weaknesses. Some people are better at identifying their weaknesses and others are better at identifying their strengths. But it's important that you make a list of both. Identify your strengths so that you can really highlight those, and identify your weaknesses so that you can work on them and turn them into a strength. If you struggle, which a lot of people do, ask a friend, ask some family, ask a coworker to help you list out your areas of strength and weakness. Get to know the company's goals and objectives. If it's within your current organization or an organization that you're looking to move to, know what they're about. What do they value? What are their goals? What are their objectives? Where do they see themselves in the next 5 years? Improve your EQ, that emotional intelligence, empathy, and understanding. It is the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions. You can use it to overcome challenges, empathize with others, communicate effectively. Your EQ is one of the strongest indicators of success in business. It's not only the ability to identify and manage your own emotions, it's also the ability to recognize the emotions of others. So I've got some quick ways that you can improve your EQ. To utilize an assertive style of communication. respond instead of reacting to conflict, utilize active listening skills, be motivated, practice ways to maintain a positive attitude, practice self-awareness, take critiques well, and empathize with others. So polish your communication skills is another great way that you can prepare to transition to being a manager. Polish your skills both verbally and in written form, in professional business correspondence, as well as emails. How you communicate helps translate that message and get it across to everyone in the way you want it to be. One area that I had identified was a weakness of mine when I was making my list was I tended to talk really fast when leaving a voicemail. And again, this is the days of the answering machine, so you could always rewind the tape and play it back. But I really worked on slowing down when I left a message, making sure they had my phone number multiple times. At that time, the organization I was working with, we left a lot of phone calls or a lot of messages. And so I really worked on that. So communication is important. Find a mentor. I have a mentor that I meet with once a month. It is important to have someone that you can talk to about your business goals, that you can emulate some of their behavior, that you can bounce ideas off of, and to have someone that you know is in your corner. Another way to prepare is to role model your behavior. So they say dress for the position you want. I say also role model for the position that you want. Role model your time management, role model your integrity, and role model your accountability. Know the teams and the key players. Get to know what projects they're involved in. Who are the up-and-comers within the company? It just helps you develop an easier transition and to identify your company's objectives. And then look for opportunities. Again, whether it's formal or informal, inside your organization or out, look for opportunities and ways that you can really highlight yourself as a leader as you make that transition. So I'm really glad that I spent time preparing, working on my strengths and weaknesses, improving my communication skills, because I found myself a couple of years after I was crying on my couch, eating ice cream, I had the opportunity to become the manager of that department in the organization and found myself managing my old manager. So certainly a bit of a unique situation, and I was glad I had some preparation. Okay, it's time. You've got the role. Now what? How do you make that transition? I think the best place to start is to develop your personal mission statement. Identify what drives you. What way does your arrow point? A personal mission statement helps define your values, who you are, and how you define success. A personal mission statement can be used to help guide your decisions and to help you stay focused and meet your long-term goals. So sometimes a personal mission statement is short, sometimes it's long. I'm going to share with you a snippet of my personal mission statement. I will serve as a forward-thinking leader so that our organization can reach its goals. I am at my best when I am working towards my goals, and I will try to prevent times when I fall short of those goals. I will raise my children to be strong, independent thinkers. I will strive to be the best me and allow that version to shine at work and home. I will find opportunities to use my natural talents and gifts. I will build people up, not tear them down, and I will make a difference in the lives of my family and coworkers through my words and actions. Having that statement helps guide me when I make decisions. As you make that transition, it's ever important to be genuine and trustworthy. Just because you have the title doesn't mean you've earned the trust. Trust and authority isn't a lifetime purchase. You need a new ticket from time to time, and your actions and decisions matter. It's important to realize you're no longer a peer, and that's okay. You may not get invited to the same lunches or drinks after work. The water cooler conversation may stop when you walk by. You're in a new role, and that's part of making that transition. Set goals and celebrate achievements. Set goals for your team, set goals for yourself, and have a celebration when it happens. And a celebration can be as easy as a, yay, I did it. But it's important to highlight when you've met those goals. As you transition, look for early wins. Look for ways that you can set your team up to be successful and to congratulate them. Look for ways that everybody can win right out of the gate. It's important to remember you were once in their shoes. No matter how heavy the battle gets when you're working towards accomplishing a goal or finishing a project, remember you were once in the other side of the desk or in that chair trying to accomplish that goal. So be supportive, make sure they have the tools that they need. Develop an expectation game plan. I like to share early on with my teams my expectations for them. I then in turn ask for their expectations of me so that we can have a level playing field going forward. Be approachable. Be somebody that they feel comfortable coming to talk to. Set aside time to talk to your direct reports one-on-one. Find out what their goals are. What are their strengths and weaknesses? Where do they see themselves in a year? Don't lead from a position of power and ego. Being boss and being bossy are two different things, though I think my family would disagree somewhat of that at home. But being a boss doesn't mean you get to be bossy. You don't always have to lead with power. Don't try and gain popularity points. It doesn't usually work. I'm a good manager because I'm a good leader, not because I'm the most popular and everyone loves me. It's important that you stay focused on the goals, have fun, treat people kindly, but you don't always have to be the most popular. Delegate and practice good time management. Nothing is better than checking something off of a to-do list, and others are counting on you to get things done. Model your behavior after a great boss. We've all had them. Think about what did they do that made them so great? How did they make you feel? What kinds of things did they say? How did they lead the team? And model your behavior after that. Don't assume that you always need to use authority. Sometimes the greatest approach is the softer approach. Ask them for help. Give them the resources, let them be successful, hold them accountable. Show appreciation. It doesn't have to be monetary or expensive. Sometimes just a Post-it note stuck to your computer at the end of the day saying thank you goes a long way. And know when to ask for help. You're not on an island by yourself. You've got teams of people, family and friends around that you can ask for help. Being a new manager isn't easy. It can sometimes feel like jumping out of an airplane, even with a parachute. No one is perfect, and you can't expect that you will follow all of these behaviors all of the time. But holding yourself to practice these things will place you light years ahead. Good leadership and management take patience, wisdom, and experience. Things you'll gain the longer you're a leader. All right, you've made that transition, and now it's time to let go of some of your old responsibilities. Letting go isn't always about how well the other person does. A lot of the time, letting go is about us. Some quick ways that you can let go is allow that person to be successful. So maybe they didn't put the pens in the right place. Are the pens still out? If they are, then allow that person to be successful, even if it's not the way you would do it, if the end result is what's needed. Accept that their ways may be different. Adopt a win-win-win attitude. A win for the person is a win for you, which is then a win for the company. That triple win can go a long way at helping the transition and letting go simpler. Be patient. It takes time for someone to catch on to a new job. And you need to be patient with yourself and allow yourself to have the feelings that you're feeling, but don't let them interfere with how you're coaching or training that person to take over. And then most importantly, and I do have to remind myself of this from time to time, that you're still a rock star. Often people who get promoted are rock stars. And when you do something new, you maybe don't feel like a rock star anymore. And maybe somebody else is the rock star. But remember, you're still a rock star. And you just have to build up your experience to become that rock star again. Every leader will at some point have to guide their team through a crisis. I found that I've been myself the strongest leader when I'm leading through adversity or crisis. Don't let anger characterize how you interact with your team. Some of the best leaders and managers I know are successful because they can lead through adversity. Early on, Walt Disney's Laugh-O-Gram studio went broke, leaving a talented man out of work. Abraham Lincoln plummeted into financial ruin as a young shopkeeper. H.J. Heinz's venture to sell horseradish was a complete flop before his recipe for ketchup took off. John Addison, the leadership editor for Success magazine, sums up the process of leading through adversity nicely in 5 A's. Assess. Assess the situation quickly and honestly. Seek to understand the root of the situation. What went wrong? Ask. What are the facts? Ask questions. Associate. When examining the situation, sometimes it's easy to only talk to people in your circle, but you should talk to every level of the organization to help identify what went wrong to avoid that in the future. Articulate. Communicate what went wrong and what the plan is to fix it. At times of crisis, you may not ever have 100% perfect plan to move forward. If you have an 80% plan, sometimes that's okay. Take this year, for example. I had plans for our company that changed. We adapted and controlled what we could control, and we're moving ahead one step at a time. And that's how you make it through an adverse situation. Act. Take action and fix the things that need to be fixed. Inspect what you expect. If you expect your team to increase their benchmarks X%, then inspect it. Look at it. If you're asking them to do it, follow up and verify. Going through adversity is not but it can open doors and highlight skills that you didn't even maybe know you had. Keeping a positive attitude under pressure, leaders pass through adversity, oftentimes growing in stature more than they ever could during times of comfort. All right, best practices. We all want to be successful going forward. We all want to continue being successful. I've identified these as some best practices to help do that. Maintain your credibility. It is the foundation of leadership. If people don't believe the messenger, they won't believe the message being delivered. Your words and actions must align with each other. Know what's important. What's your company's objectives? And what should you be working on now to move your department or team forward to achieve these goals? Everyone needs a different approach. The sentiment applies to people as well as problems. If you want to be a better manager, you'll need to know how to identify the different types of people and how to bring out the best in them. Develop, foster, and grow strong teams. Strong teams are important for achieving your organization's goals and objectives. A great team is fun. It makes work easier and helps you as a manager, because a win for the team is a win for you. Become a lifelong learner. So those of you who've been in management for a while, you're continuing to learn and to grow. You're taking part in today. Stephen Covey has his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I read it years and years ago, but number 7 really stuck with me, and that is to sharpen the saw. Continue to learn and develop yourself. Read, watch videos, attend webinars. Develop yourself in your industry and personally. Have consistent messaging. Be the same manager on Thursday that you were on Tuesday. Don't make them wonder who's coming in to work today. I know a manager that it's a mystery of how they're going to come in, and word spreads if they're in a mood to avoid them or today's a good day, you can talk to them. Myself as an example, I'm consistent in my messaging, demeanor, and professionalism. My team knows what they can expect from me, even in those times where I have to be firm or I'm upset in a situation or disappointed in action. They know what they can expect from me. I'm sure you've heard it, that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And one of the best ways to continue as a successful manager is to show you care. You can still be the boss, have authority, and be caring at the same time. In fact, you must. Those skills we talked about earlier that employees identified that their managers were lacking, those are basic caring type of skills. The ones that you put up on the screen, basic caring types of skills. Provide clear direction. You have to think about the big things while you're doing the small things so that all the small things go in the right direction. Employees need to know what the destination is and how they will get there. You need to be able to articulate what is expected and what resources are available to them. Let me go back one and talk about being confident. I tell people that I work with to be ducks on the water. That is confidence to me. You see a duck on the water and they are smooth, they are graceful, they know where they are going. They glide across the top of the water. But if you take your GoPro and you go under the water, you see their feet kicking and churning to get them where they need to be. And as a manager who has confidence, you need to be that duck on the water. Portray that confidence, but know that you are kicking like crazy to make things happen. Often managers avoid giving feedback, and that's not fair to the employees. It's not fair to your organization, and it's not fair to you as a manager. If people don't communicate if people don't hear how they're doing, or we don't communicate how they're doing, they're often left wondering. And so here's just some quick Peggy's tips on giving feedback. Often people avoid giving feedback because they don't want to come across as being negative, but it's important. Be specific. Make it about the performance, not the person. Give a warning that you're going to give feedback. When you call the person in, have them sit down. I want to give you some feedback, and go right into it. If you can, avoid the sandwich. Compliment, feedback, compliment. Often the message in the middle gets lost. Sometimes the sandwich works, but oftentimes that middle portion is left out. Keep it private. I believe in praising in public and critiquing and providing feedback in private. Ask yourself, is it true? Is it kind? And is it necessary? If you answered yes to all three of those, then you need to do it. And when I say, is it kind, can you do it in a kind way? Don't wait for a review. There should never be any surprises. And then finally, be someone's great boss, right? We talked earlier about identifying who your great bosses are and modeling your behavior after them. You have the chance to do that for somebody else, and that is a tremendous thing. So be that great boss for someone. Okay, I'd like to tell you a story about this beautiful pink sewing machine. So I love all things vintage, I love pink, and I love a good auction. My kids knew when they were younger and we went to an auction, if I took my auction stance, that I was going home with that item. I have 25 yardsticks at home to prove that, because I wanted them and I was going to have them. So I felt that way about this pink sewing machine too. So again, let me set a little bit of a timeline here so you know what resources I had to work with. So it was early in 1997. I had just graduated from Doane in 96. I got married in 96. We bought our first home in 97. And I felt like I needed a sewing machine so that I could sew things for the house. And I went to an auction with a fellow Doane person, and we went to an auction, and I saw this beautiful sewing machine come up. And it was pink. I knew I had to have it. And so I put my card up and I started bidding, and I planted my feet, and I ended up winning the bid for this beauty for $15. So not only did I get a great sewing machine, I also got a heck of a bargain. So this pink sewing machine is all metal. Came with boxes of accessories, and inside of it were rufflers and button makers and all sorts of things. It's belt driven, so really unlike anything I used in high school when I was taking those classes. So I put the lid on, I take it home, I swing by the store and pick up some fabric. I am gonna make some new curtains for my kitchen. And I get it all set up, I get some music playing, I'm ready to go. I take off the lid, and lo and behold, I don't have any idea how to thread it. It's got a couple things I've never seen before. That belt drive, I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know how to wind a bobbin. I couldn't even turn it on. I called my mom and I said, can you help me? I cannot figure this out. And I'm trying to talk with her over the phone. She couldn't help me. My mother-in-law couldn't help me. And there certainly wasn't Google at that time that I could just look up. So here I was feeling defeated. I had this great sewing machine and nothing that I could do with it. So I loaded it up in the back of my red Cavalier, and I went to the local sewing machine and vacuum sales in the town that I lived in. I walked in and they said, throw it in the junk heap, let me sell you a new one. I went to another town, and I was traveling quite a bit for work at that time, so I had a pretty easy access to a variety of places. And I went to another town and hauled this heavy thing out and showed them, and I got pretty much the same reaction at that store and at 3 other stores. It wasn't until I found a vacuum cleaner sales and sewing machine repair shop. I walked in and took off the lid, and I was feeling pretty defeated at that time. And the manager, the owner, came out and said, "Oh my gosh, do you know what you have? You've got a beautiful shell pink Atlas sewing machine made shortly after World War II with the original Better Homes and Garden seal on it, and you have all of the accessories." I said, "Yeah, I do, and it's great, but I don't know how to use it." So he went to the back and he came out and he had the owner's manual. He showed me how to thread it. All I bought that day was a new belt, so I had a spare in case it broke. I wasn't a big customer. As time went on, I referred more people. I told them all about the great customer service that he provided. But not only did I learn some things about customer service, I thought about this pink sewing machine, or Pinky, as we call her at the house. I thought about Pinky and the lessons I learned and how they apply to me as a manager. So I want to share with you some lessons of a pink sewing machine, but let me go back to my lessons of a pink sewing machine. To be kind. As a manager, it's important to be kind. Those first few places that I took my pink sewing machine to weren't very kind. When I found someone who was kind, I was successful. Kind bosses have successful teams. Have confidence and know your goals. I was confident I had something pretty spectacular. I was confident that I could do something with it, and I didn't want to give up until I found somebody who shared that vision. And that's how managers are successful, is to have confidence in yourself and know your goals. Know the value of what you contribute. So what I found out was that pink sewing machine was, at that time in '97, worth about $300 because it was pretty rare. And so I knew what I had was special. I needed to find someone who saw it as well. Ask for help. I couldn't do it on my own. I didn't know how to thread it. I had to ask for help. It's okay to ask for help as a manager. And then finally, to realize that change is okay. I loved pink sewing machine, but I'll be honest, I haven't sewn on it for years. It only does a straight stitch. I wanted to zigzag. I wanted to do some extra things. So when it came time to buy a new sewing machine, I went back to that sewing machine repair shop who was so helpful, and I purchased a new machine. Change is okay. As a manager, change is all right. You're transitioning from a role of a colleague to a leader, and that's okay. I'd like to close today with a quote. Great leaders don't set out to be great leaders. They set out to make a difference. It's never about the role, it's always about the goal. It wasn't long ago I was in your place, striving to be a manager and knowing that I had what it takes. If you're a manager brushing up on your skills and your knowledge, I've certainly been there too. It's important to remember you will be successful in anything you do if you focus less time on your title and more about the goals. Your personal goals, your company's goals, and your growth goals. Make a difference in the lives of your team and the work you do every day.
All right, that's great, Peggy. Thank you so much. We will go ahead, if this is all right time for you, We'll go ahead and use this time to take questions now. So just a reminder, if you're joining us on Zoom, please be sure to type your questions into the question and answer box at the very bottom of your Zoom toolbar. Or if you're joining us from Facebook, you can leave us a question or a thought in the comment section. So while our audience is writing questions, I just wanted to make sure and thank you, Peggy, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I always enjoy hearing the story of how you and your husband Matt met at Doane, and now your son Zane goes to school, and I think I saw he was attending today too. Yeah. Well, your family's always been a big proponent of our music program and our Greek system and other areas, so we just really value your commitment to Doane. So thank you for being here virtually and really sharing from your own experiences today.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. So it looks like we have a few chats that are still going on. Lots of good examples. Oh, Zane says, "Good job, Mom." So that's always nice to hear.
He'll get an extra care package.
That's right. We'll send it to him. I have a question for you while some other ones come in. Before I came back to Doane to work here, I worked at a company that I really loved. And there was a lot of internal promotion there, which was great for some of the bigger departments, especially with people that were technicians and customer service, technical support, some really great internal growth. But that was difficult for some people because they were used to being really good friends with the people in their department. And socially, they would do things on Fridays and Saturdays and stuff. And suddenly they found themselves in a position where now they were in charge or they were leading some of those people, and those social aspects were always in question. You know, how much of a friend can you still be? Can you still go out and take shots on Friday night? Those kind of things. That was difficult. So what would you suggest to some of those people that are going in that internal route and having to adjust their social aspects a little bit?
So I tend to always lean towards the super professional side and really changing those relationships. It is difficult, and I'll go, you know, if you go out and you have some social time with a large group, multiple managers, things like that, that's more acceptable. But if you're having drinks with one coworker or one of your employees and you're on a team of 8 and the other 7 don't get to come, that is a tough situation to be in. And oftentimes, you know, those situations aren't very successful because people's integrity is called in, their favoritism is called into question. And so I just find that it's best to just back away and say, you know, we've had a great relationship. We're going to continue to have a great relationship, but it's changing now.
Right. Especially when you're in a position that you might be terminating somebody down the road too.
Right. Yeah. So you're dictating their wage, you're dictating their salary, you're dictating if they have the job. You just can't have those kind of perceived favoritism kind of roles.
Right. That makes sense. Well, one of the areas that you talked about too right away that I found super interesting was suddenly becoming the manager of your past manager. So what were some of the things that you ran into in that situation that you had to hone those skills?
Yeah. First, I had to let go of some resentment I had because she was not, in my case, a great manager for me. And so I say learn from a great boss. You can also learn from a bad boss as much. And so I had to kind of check myself, right? Is she doing her job? Is she doing what she's supposed to be doing? Are my expectations of her the same as everybody else? And that's really where I had to start because it was a unique situation. So.
Yeah, I bet. We have another question that came in from Eric Cantrell. Ike, it's very good to see you here today. And I haven't read through this yet, so let me go ahead and say it out loud here. He said, here's a question about challenges in changing the culture of a team. A former manager of the company allowed an environment of disorganization and clutter, and we found that to be unsustainable as things get lost, often making people go on a wild goose chase. The new managers want to change the team behavior, keep a tidy workplace, put tools away, but they don't want to come across as bossy parents telling the staff to clean up after themselves. What advice would you give on managing this cultural transition? And it sounds like this kind of coincides with some of the expectations you talked about before.
That's exactly what I was going to say. So When I talked about repairing broken teams, I had an opportunity to become the leader, the manager of a team that was in a similar situation. Bit of disarray, a lot of anger, a lot of resentment. And so I came in and I met with everyone one-on-one, found out their strengths, what they like, what they'd like to change. Then I molded my expectations to what I expected of the team. So in this case, I expect that we're going to have things put away at the end of the day. And I really laid it out up front. And then, recognize when they hit those benchmarks, recognize when they're successful, and have some fun with it. We had some fun kind of contesty kinds of things to help break the ice. But I think level setting those expectations up front is really important.
Sure, sure. And you mentioned, you step into a situation where there's a lot of negativity to start with. They've maybe had a bad experience. How do you go into that situation doing a kind of needs analysis to figure out where your priorities should be and where you should be starting as you learn to manage and lead?
So in that instance, the first thing I looked for was, were the company objectives being met? Were we doing what the company expected for results? Were we meeting our minimum expectations there? Were we following the rules to do that? In this case, there was some rules involved. So were we following those rules? Were we meeting the expectations? And once I could answer that those were, then I could really dive into the relationship piece of the team. But until we were meeting the company's objectives, and sometimes they coincide, right? If you're not meeting the company's objectives, you maybe need to dive into the relationship side first to get the team built up and get them doing what they're doing. But that's the first thing I would do is to see where they are on the company objectives.
Sure, sure. Well, it looks like, Peggy, we've covered all of our questions. So is there anything else you wanted to make sure and say before we wrap up?
Go Doane.
Yeah, I will always take that. That's a good conclusion. Well, I want to make sure to say thank you to everybody for coming today. We really appreciate you being here. This webinar has been recorded and it will be shared online soon. So you're welcome to share that with your friends or perhaps the person that's in a leadership position that needs to hear it. So to see a lineup of new webinars, go to doane.edu/lifelong tigers. And our next webinar will take place on Thursday, September 3rd at 4:30 p.m. Central, and will feature Dr. Bob Muckle, who was a professor of biology. You must remember Bob.
Yeah.
He was at Doane for 45 years, and that is just amazing to me. He's very well loved, and he'll be talking about his hobby of photography now and how that coincides with his background in biology. So I know it's going to be a good one. Thank you again for joining us, everyone, and as always, go Doane.